Each character experiences Silent Hill differently, depending on their psyche, their unconscious, and their trauma. What Angela and Eddie go through in Silent Hill is completely different from James's journey. Each of them experiences something that is extracted from their own trauma and the psychological damage it has caused. If they manage to confront their trauma and reach a level of self-awareness, then personal growth becomes possible. Based on how the story unfolds, we know that James is the only character who's given the possibility of reaching resolution and inner balance. The other characters, Angela and Eddie, are headed toward a single outcome: failure. They lose the fight against themselves. In this video, we are going to analyze these two characters from a psychological perspective. By the end, we'll see how they are connected and why each of them represents a different psychological response to trauma. I can confidently say that Angela is one of the most impactful characters in the entire franchise. At first, we learned that just like James, Angela came to Silent Hill searching for someone. She's looking for her mother, and she mentions this during their very first encounter. But every time James encounters Angela, new sides of her personality are revealed. For Angela, Silent Hill isn't just a strange or frightening place, it's hell. And since Silent Hill reflects the unconscious mind of the person experiencing it, we can confidently say that Angela is trapped inside her own personal inferno. She's stuck in a psychological nightmare she cannot escape from. The most devastating moment in Angela's story comes when we finally understand where her suffering truly comes from. The pain she lives with is the result of repeated physical and sexual abuse by the hands of her father. When a child experiences trauma of this magnitude, the damage goes far beyond a single memory. A large part of the psyche is affected because a child's mind hasn't fully developed yet. Trauma like this attacks the very foundation of the psyche and leaves deep, lasting scars. The first thing that happens is that the role of the father, who in a child's mind should represent safety, care, and emotional support, becomes deeply distorted. In other words, the role the father was supposed to play, love and protection, gets fused with the role he actually plays in Angela's life. The impact doesn't just disappear in adulthood, it stays with Angela. She becomes unable to see care or kindness without suspecting hidden intentions. To her, anyone who gets close or shows concern is assumed to want one thing, and that one thing is sexual exploitation.
Okay, Angela. It's okay. Calm down.
Don't order me around!
I'm not. It's okay. It's over.
Don't even try.
Try what?
Like you don't know. I see what you're doing. It's always the same with you. You're only after one thing.
Angela, please.
You don't have to lie. Go ahead. Say it.
What we clearly see in this scene is that simply because James helps her, Angela immediately feels like she owes him something, and this leads us directly to the second psychological effect of her trauma. Secondly, Angela believes that the only possible response to kindness from anyone is through her body. That's because the value system formed in her childhood was entirely body-centered. Punishment, reward, and abuse were all tied to her body. If James helps her or shows even basic care, she assumes she must repay him physically. Many of the values we carry into adulthood are actually the same childlike value systems imposed on us by parents or authority figures. What we learn as rewardable or punishable is shaped early in life. Even when we grow up and consciously reject those systems, they remain alive in the unconscious. That unexpected unexplained guilt we sometimes feel after doing something completely normal often comes from that early conditioning. Angela is clearly trapped in this cycle. When someone experiences severe unresolved trauma, especially trauma that lingers for years, the part of the psyche affected by it often stops developing. It stays frozen at the age when the trauma occurred. So what does that mean here? It means Angela approaches emotional situations like a child. Her trauma happened in childhood, and that's where her emotional development stopped. You can clearly hear this in the way she talks about her mother. There's another aspect of Angela's character that's even more destructive than everything we've established so far. Children usually grow up believing that their parents would never intentionally hurt them, and even if they do cause pain, the child assumes it must be for their own good, or that it will somehow have a positive outcome in the end. At a young age, parents are seen as absolute authorities, people who don't make mistakes, who understand right and wrong better than anyone else, and whose words and actions are always correct. Angela, as a child, viewed the world through this exact mindset. Because of that, she came to believe that her father's actions were her own fault. What makes this even more disturbing is that her mother reinforced this belief. With this way of thinking, the child turns the blame inward. The pain they experience becomes something they believe they deserve. Angela believed that her own mistakes were the reason her father punished her. Over time, this completely destroys a child's sense of self-worth. She can no longer see herself as someone valuable. Children who grow up in abusive households often lack any real sense of self-worth or confidence. In many cases, they develop deep self-hatred. You can clearly see this in Angela's body language. She never seems comfortable in her own skin. She constantly tries to hide herself, to make herself look smaller, as if she's ashamed of something that was never her fault to begin with. Eventually, a child with shattered self-worth develops even deeper emotional issues. These individuals often believe they are not deserving of love. They cling to any affection they receive from anyone. They believe that only someone else's love can heal them. Angela is trapped in this exact mentality. Her interactions with James clearly reflect this. She needs someone to tell her that she matters, that she's worthy of love, and more importantly, to show it.
No, Angela, that is not true.
Don't pity me. I'm not worth it. Or maybe you think you can save me? Will you love me? Care for me? Heal all my pain? That's what I thought.
Angela never experienced unconditional love. As a result, love itself becomes a fixation, something she believes she cannot survive without. Putting all that aside, there's another detail that makes Angela's story far more traumatic. Even her mother was never a safe place for her. Earlier in the game, it's easy to assume that while Angela's father was the abuser, her mother represented the good parts of her life. But later in the story, we learned something devastating.
Thank you for helping me earlier. But I wish you hadn't. Even Mama said it. I deserve what happened.
No, Angela, that is not true.
Her mother not only stayed silent, but actively validated the father's actions and placed the blame on Angela herself. As a child, Angela didn't have the ability to distinguish right from wrong in a situation like this. But as she grew older, she began to understand the full weight of what had happened to her. Her father's role was clear from the start. He was abusive, disturbed, and dangerous. That part, as horrifying as it was, eventually made sense to her. But her mother, that's where the real question begins. Why did the one person who could have protected her stay silent? Why did the person who could have saved her turn away? This why is even heavier than the trauma caused by her father, because her father's identity was always clear, but her mother's betrayal is harder to explain and to accept, and far more destructive. That's why Angela is searching for her mother. She isn't looking for just a person, she's looking for an answer. For Angela, freedom is tied to understanding that one question. Unlike James, who comes to Silent Hill searching for someone, Angela comes searching for understanding, for meaning, and for closure. But there's no alternative ending for Angela. In the end, she cannot reconcile with the trauma she carries. She's unable to accept and process the unconscious pain that defines her inner world, and instead, she's consumed by it. Eddie is a character who at first glance seems innocent and almost harmless. But as the story progresses, he changes in a way that feels both disturbing and deeply unsettling. Every time James encounters Eddie, the interaction is completely different from the last. It's as if Eddie becomes a new person each time, or rather, he reveals a different layer of his personality. This inconsistency isn't random. It reflects a fragmented sense of self, a personality that has never been allowed to stabilize because it was constantly shaped and damaged by external judgment. Unlike James, Eddie doesn't come to Silent Hill searching for someone. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Eddie comes here to run away, to escape his bullies. Throughout the game, we see the same pattern repeating itself. Someone seems to be constantly chasing Eddie, and every time Eddie kills that person, yet somehow they keep coming back. Silent Hill turns Eddie's psychological fear into a loop. No matter how many times he fights back, the threat never truly disappears. But the truth goes deeper than that. Eddie's greatest bully isn't anyone else, it's himself. No matter how hard he tries, he cannot escape his own mind. After enduring years of bullying, Eddie develops a deep sense of self-hatred. This is a common unconscious response in people who experience long-term bullying. Over time, the abuser's voice becomes internalized. The insults stop coming from others and start coming from within.
You fat, disgusting piece of shit, you make me sick. You gonna cry, fat ass? You gonna run to your mama? Waste of skin, why don't you just kill yourself? Well, maybe he was right. Maybe I am nothing but a fat, disgusting piece of shit.
When Eddie looks at himself, all he can see are the things others have said about him. His identity is no longer self-defined. It's constructed entirely out of ridicule. This is why Eddie doesn't just feel hated. He believes he deserved that hatred. Just like Angela, Eddie has extremely low confidence and self-esteem, and this is painfully clear throughout the game. But unlike Angela, whose pain turns inward and becomes self-destructive, Eddie's pain eventually turns outward and becomes violent. Another important aspect of Eddie's character is the way he interacts with James. People with low self-esteem often interpret everything as a personal attack. You're always walking on thin ice with these people. Even neutral words or actions can feel like insults.
You coming?
Now you want me to come with you?
Never mind.
This is exactly how Eddie responds to James, and this interaction becomes stronger with every encounter. But why? Because James approaches everything from a moral high ground. He has an ego that allows him to judge others openly. He speaks with certainty, with confidence, and with the assumption that he understands right and wrong. For someone like Eddie, whose entire life has been shaped by being judged, this is unbearable. We see this clearly in this interaction.
Eddie,
What's that? You want to talk down to me some more? Tell me to relax? You're just like the rest of them, James.
no, I don't want.
Shut up! You think I'm stupid. You think I don't see it. But you've been laughing at me all along. Ever since we first met. But you ain't laughing now, are you?
You need help, Eddie.
Don't get all holy on me, James. This town called you too.
To Eddie, James isn't a helper or a guide. He's just another person looking down on him. People like James deeply frustrate people like Eddie. From Eddie's perspective, anyone who judges him with that level of confidence is just another bully. From James's perspective, Eddie doesn't really understand his own actions or what is happening around him, and therefore he needs guidance. Neither of them is fully wrong, but neither of them can truly see the other. This cycle of judging and being judged repeats over and over between them. Each encounter reinforces Eddie's belief that the world is hostile and unfair. Each interaction confirms that no matter what he does, he will always be seen as less than. Eventually, Eddie reaches a breaking point. He concludes that James is no different from the people he's been running from, or more accurately, the people he's killed. At this stage, Eddie no longer sees individuals, he sees symbols, and James becomes the symbol of every voice that ever laughed at him. Even when James speaks calmly, even when he frames his words as advice, Eddie still feels James's sense of superiority. The dynamic between these two characters is a direct reflection of who they actually are. In psychological terms, this is a collision between moral certainty and wounded identity. For all these reasons, Eddie ultimately fights James, and although James doesn't want this confrontation and doesn't want to kill Eddie, he has no choice but to defend himself. This moment represents Eddie's final decision. Instead of confronting his inner pain, he chooses to destroy what he believes is the source of it. Unlike James, Eddie never reaches self-awareness. He never questions his narrative. Eddie's death is one of the most tragic moments in the game. It's the moment we realize that Eddie lost his battle with himself. He was unable to confront, process, or heal his unconscious trauma, and in the end, it consumed him. When you put James, Angela, and Eddie side by side, Silent Hill 2 stops feeling like a story about individuals and starts feeling like a study of trauma itself. James's trauma is rooted in guilt and denial. He cannot accept what he has done, so his mind fractures reality, erases memory, and replaces truth with fantasy. Angela's trauma is built on internalized abuse. She doesn't fight the pain or run from it, she absorbs it. Eddie, on the other hand, represents externalized trauma. His pain becomes rage, his shame turns into hostility. What's important here is that none of these responses are portrayed as random or exaggerated. They are psychologically consistent. Repression can lead to dissociation and delusion. Internalized abuse can destroy self-worth. Prolonged humiliation can turn into paranoia, aggression, and violence. Silent Hill doesn't judge these characters, it simply removes the filters and forces each person to confront the raw shape of their trauma. And this is where the tragedy really lies. Angela and Eddie don't fail because they are weak. They fail because their trauma has already consumed beyond the core of who they are. Angela cannot imagine a version of herself that isn't in pain. Eddie cannot imagine a place where he isn't being attacked. James, despite everything, still has that space. That's why he's the only one who can reach an ending that resembles acceptance. Not because his trauma is smaller, but because he's still capable of facing it. Silent Hill 2 is telling us something uncomfortable. Trauma doesn't destroy people in the same way. Some people collapse inward, some burn outward, some bury the truth so deeply that it turns into monsters. And survival isn't about how much pain you've endured. It's about whether you can confront it without letting it define your whole identity. If you want to continue this deep dive into the psychology of Silent Hill, subscribe and stick around. There's still a lot left to uncover in this town. Don't forget to like if you enjoyed the video, and have a nice day.